Hello, beautiful people. I felt inspired today, so I'm going to hop on and do number 2. You fail easily. You fail easily. Such a simple phrase again, but one that I feel helps me a lot. What does it mean to fail easily? With ease means without tension, without getting stuck. It means you allow yourself to fail. You go through the process of failure. The sadness, the distress, the worries, but you don't get stuck in fear. You move on through that fear because failure is promised. Failure is how we learn. You have to figure out all the ways to not do something before you really get good at doing it. Edison tried almost 3,000 times before he got the light bulb. Failure is how we invent things. It's how we work and move as humans, but our ego once again gets stuck. It's like, I failed. I can't do it again. What's the point? What's the point? Why me? We have this phrase in English, water off a duck's back. It's a powerful phrase that I think comes from a Chinese Buddhist saying. When a duck gets wet, it's a suffering and it has to shake that water off. But the duck doesn't allow itself to suffer twice. How do we suffer twice? We suffer twice when the water gets in us and then we're like, I can't believe that happened again, that water. Oh no. That kind of self-limiting, self-hating dialogue that goes on in our heads creates a second suffering. The duck gets wet, shakes that shit off and move on. So shake it off, grieve, cry, move through it, go through your process. But don't create a second suffering, telling yourself a narrative that isn't true of, I'm terrible, I'll never get this. How do you know? Can you predict the future? I used to do that a lot. This isn't for me, I can't do it. And then every time I would read about people that achieved incredible things, all I could read was how much they doubted themselves. Leonardo da Vinci was crippled with self-doubt. Crippled with self-doubt. People always talk about how much he achieved, the big Renaissance man, but so much self-doubt in him. And that just tells us that self-doubt is clearly just another aspect of the human condition. So when you fail easily, you allow yourself to go through that process of suffering, which you need to go through in order to learn. But you don't get stuck. You don't dwell in the suffering. You allow that process and that pain to teach you what it needs to teach you. There's a Bashar quote where he says, how can you be afraid to feel? Isn't fear a feeling? If you're feeling fear, you felt one of the most negative emotions there is to feel. Everything else should be a piece of cake. Sometimes when we fail, we're afraid to try again because we just don't want to go through that horrible experience of not having achieved what our mind had tried to, what we'd set our intentions on. But you're so afraid to feel that feeling again that you're feeling something even worse. This fear, this anxiety, this stuck feeling. You can't allow yourself to get lost in those cycles. Failure is important. Failure is a lesson. Failure is useful, powerful. If you're really present with your failure and you meditate within it, you learn what you need to learn and then you know what not to do again. You fail easily, with ease, with grace, with joy. You fail like you dance, Go through your failure in cycles. And don't be afraid of it. Learn from it. Certainly learn from it, but it's not something to run away from. A lot of people don't even want to start projects or creative ideas because they're afraid they'll fail. I'm here to tell you, you probably will fail. And that's fine. Failure is promised. But what joy on the other side of that failure. What beauty, what mastery you can achieve when you push through those feelings, those blocks, learn from them, regroup, gather yourself, analyze what went wrong, what could I do differently, but don't make yourself the thing that's wrong. Don't say that you're the failure. You can never be a failure. You change every day. Your cells aren't going to be the same cells that was in your body 7 years ago. You can't be the failure unless you tell yourself you are. You fail easily. Don't put so much emphasis on not getting things right or failing. If you're looking for a self-defeating narrative like, oh, this is probably going to go wrong, and then it does, and then you accept that and you stop, what kind of life is that if you keep trapping yourself in those patterns? There's so much potential in you, so much. And all of us, our brains, our minds are so powerful. When you master your mind, you can sit with your failure, meditate on it, take the lessons you need to learn from it. And like, a snake, you shed that skin, that layer of skin, you don't need it anymore. You've now become something new, a new way. You can see it as a game. It's exciting, Once again, I go back to game metaphors. When we play games, we expect to lose until we get it. But in life, when we lose things, we become so fixated on those losses. We don't focus on what we can gain from it to become something new. And I know for some people it's easier than others, but, there's a million excuses that can be created. Point is, expect to get into these dips and do it with ease, with a flow into them and stay there. Don't fight it, because when you fight the lulls, the dips, those kind of lower points in your life, you then create twice the suffer, and you're like, oh, why am I feeling like this? How have I ended up here again? Because we all do, we all end up there again. And then we enter a new cycle and we learn, and then we end up there again. A new cycle and we learn, we end up there again. And each time we learn, we get lighter and lighter. And then the last lesson is death. Life is a constant renewal of lessons we've learned in the past. And if you look really closely, you'll notice that it's not the same you that's failing. It's not the same mistakes you're making. You're just becoming more and more attuned to the subtleties of whatever process it is that you're encouraging yourself to get into, to begin, to create. You're bringing beautiful things into this world. And failure is a part of that. Failure is a part of that. Peace.